We are so excited for you to meet Tim Lightbourne and Rob Cameron of Invivo Wines. Tim, who is the director of Invivo, and Rob, who is the winemaker of Invivo, are childhood friends who have created an award-winning brand and have partnered with Sarah Jessica Parker to create wines that are available throughout the world. So stay tuned to hear more about their story and how these two came together and collaborated with Sarah Jessica Parker. Hello, and welcome to the Wine Pair Podcast. I'm Joe, your sommelier of reasonably priced wine, and for this special episode, I am on my own as my wine pairing partner in crime is busy making cakes for her Baby Cakes micro bakery, which, by the way, you can learn more about if you head over to her website, lovebabycakes.com. But now, as a quick orientation to our podcast, what we usually do in each episode is learn about, taste, and review 2 to 3 wines that are reasonably priced, which means under $20, and should be easy to find. However, for this special set of episodes, we interview people who are involved in actually making wine. Because part of what we want to do with our podcast is to educate ourselves and you on different aspects of wine knowledge in a fun, entertaining, and unstuffy way, and maybe even fun and entertaining, as Decanter Magazine has called our podcast. And that is what we are doing today. And a small plug before we get to our interview with Tim and Rob. If you like what you're hearing or are interested in hearing our other regular episodes, please subscribe to or follow our podcast so you can hear more, especially since you're only getting one half of the Wine Pair podcast in this episode. You can also go to our website, thewinepairpodcast.com, to send us a note or subscribe to our newsletter. You can follow us on Instagram at the Wine Pair Podcast. And if you like what you're hearing, you can even leave us a nice rating and review. We won't mind. But now, let's get on to our interview with Tim and Rob. Hi, Tim and Rob, and welcome to the Wine Pair Podcast.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, you bet. We are so happy and honored to have you with us. And I'm really looking forward to learning more about you both. I think I have to admit, this is the first time I have interviewed people involved in winemaking with a story quite like yours. I don't usually talk to more than one person, so you're going to have to kind of take it easy on me. You can't just like team up. You have to go one at a time. But I'm super interested to find out more about how you got started, how you went from childhood friends to starting your own global wine company, and then probably more than almost anything, how you got involved with Sarah Jessica Parker.
It's been a long journey, but yeah, happy to tell it.
Awesome. So, well, let's jump in. Let's talk a little bit about you, your background, how you met, and then the journey to Invivo.
We're just we're just arguing who's going to start this, because we tell a story a bit. It's kind of, Tim normally does his thing, and look, it started for us at high school, which is really cool. We can actually see our high school from this office here, which is kind of cool. And, we kind of grew up together, same group of friends, played in sports teams together. And, we just, like many New Zealanders or Kiwis, when I say Kiwi, I'm referring to New Zealanders, we end up overseas in the UK. It was a very, very common road for young New Zealanders to go and explore the other side of the planet and live in London. And we just happened to end up living kind of really close to each other, kind of around the corner. Again, similar group of friends had moved over, and obviously both of us hadn't seen each other in quite some time, and in completely different industries. Tim was in marketing, and I was working as a consultant winemaker, managing some European properties. And we just got talking one day over a couple of beers, as you do at the pub, which is very London. And we saw an opportunity. Both of us had some entrepreneurial experience. I mean, Tim would tell a story better than I can, but he had an amazing idea growing up, with his family who were both physiotherapists and worked in sports medicine. He created this incredible sports cream, for athletes, and he took it from kind of kitchen blender of the stovetop to full commercial production. And also, while doing this with his family, had his own career. And similarly, I foolishly set up a winery and vineyards with my family while I was also trying to pursue my own career. So here we were in London, both having that background, still having the ties to, the family businesses. And so kind of getting, I suppose, thinking about heading home and growing up and, putting the suit on and actually kind of working for a living instead of having fun. And we thought, well, why come back to New Zealand and work for the man? Why don't we, put our skills together and do something kind of interesting in the wine space?
So we launched our first wine in 2008, put all our savings together, put everything on the line, quit our full-time jobs. Rob went and begged and borrowed some growers that would grow some grapes or give us their grapes. We had no gear, so we borrowed other people's gear. Rob would go into a winery and actually make our wine at someone else's winery. My role was kind of the marketing/sales guy. 2008 was New Zealand's largest ever harvest of Sauvignon Blanc in history, and we were launching a Sauvignon. So can you imagine all the retailers overstocked with this wine, and then we launched with this wine, and they didn't know us. Didn't know the brand. We had no family history of 200 years of winemaking. We were just mates from school.
We had no money.
We had no money as well. So we would literally get an order for 6 bottles from the local wine shop. We would go and stand in that store and do a tasting. So they'd reorder. There were months where we didn't pay ourselves anything. We expanded across the country, and every weekend or every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we'd be doing tastings just so we get more orders. Couldn't afford to advertise at the time. So we built it up like that. There were months where we didn't think we would survive the business, and why are we doing this? We had good jobs before, and then suddenly earning nothing, going backwards very fast. So we did some real hard yards in those early days.
I suppose, that what we thought we could do differently, and subsequently we have, but at the time, possibly a little naively, but we could see the success of New Zealand wines globally, just the taste profile. Sauvignon Blanc is, there's nowhere on the planet that produces flavors like Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc. There really isn't. And, bring it on if you want to challenge that. I can't see that. So there was always kind of an easy road for a lot of New Zealand producers to some degree that, customers would find that wine because it's just so unique. But we could sort of see that in the absence of some real innovation and kind of branding and marketing and storytelling, apart from, the terroir-based stories, which are great, but, that's common to every wine company. We wanted to do something a bit different. We thought we could add a bit more fun, a bit more sort of contemporary, aspect to this brand and the wine. We can still tell our wine story. And, the first wines that we made were very much European influence from my years of making wine up there. And that was kind of very much my focus at the time, was trying to add, use European techniques that weren't, possibly being used a lot in New Zealand at the time. Oak and Sauvignon Blanc, a lot of batonnage and Surly treatment, things like that. And, consequently, we made some pretty cool wines, but it wasn't enough. And we needed to elevate that storytelling ability. And we started off by doing that with collaborating, basically. We launched our brand with a fashion designer, very famous in New Zealand, who helped us take care of the design work. And we worked with artists and musicians in the early years, supporting them. They supported us, and just kind of trying to tell stories through collaboration. And that's very much what we're about. I mean, Invivo, we spent a long time trying to come up with the name of the company, and it just sort of came to us one day. And Invivo means in life, in the now, in the living. And it's very much, what we're about. I mean, wine is ultimately an extraordinary, pleasurable pastime. When you're having a glass of wine, you're often with the people that you love the most. And we just think, that's the best. It can't be beaten, with your family, with your friends, enjoying some good food, good wine. I mean, that's the ultimate. It's why we all do it here, right? So that was kind of the basis, I suppose, the genesis of the company ethos, culture, and, MO to some degrees of collaboration. And we just sort of took it from there. As Tim mentioned, just working our butts off, traveling around the world, seeing every customer we could. That sometimes naivety in knowing how big the mountain is, not being able to see the top, is kind of a good thing. And otherwise, I think we probably would have had different ideas, because it's a hard business. It really is. But, we continued, those early days, just to make great wine, get internationally recognized for quality, tell that story alongside the more fun stuff with, collaborators. And then, just slowly lift our game.
I have, this is fascinating. I have so many questions that I want to ask you. I mean, I think the first one is, so you're telling me you guys didn't come up with the idea on the rugby field or playing cricket or anything like that. So was it when you were in high school that you came up with this idea?
No, it was in that London pub over a few beers.
Perfect. Yeah.
But unlike many ideas over beers, and as you probably know yourself, we actually followed through with this one. It wasn't a night of ideas. We actually made it happen.
Yeah, we did, and we did it right. We took it seriously. We did. I think we took about a year in planning it. We spent 6 months writing this massive, gigantic doorstop of a business plan that basically the first week in business we had to throw out the window because none of it made sense anymore. It's kind of common. So no, we thought we did it right. I came back to New Zealand early, started scouting out grapes, winemaking. For those who don't understand the process, you don't always have to own your own vineyards or own your own wineries to make wine. And because we had no money, the New Zealand system is very much based upon farmers being the primary producers of grapes. And so, they're happy to sell their grapes, work with different wine companies, it's not that common in Europe, but a little in the US, but, it's very much the model we have here. So it sort of enabled us to start producing wines and pick and choose what grapes we wanted, where from, etc. And then using someone else's equipment, it just enabled us to start our business without investing a huge amount of capital. And we always knew there'd be a bit of an inflection point where that no longer made sense. And that we kind of hit that about 5 or 6 years ago. We now have 2 wineries that we run ourselves and a number of vineyards that we run ourselves in conjunction with growers as well. But yeah, no, those early days, they were real tough.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear from your story, you guys gutted it out. I mean, it was a lot of sweat and hard work, clearly, from what you were saying, just to get things off the ground. It's actually pretty remarkable how far you've come. And it probably feels like a while for you, but, it's not that long that you've created this amazing brand. Now, Rob, you said that you had some background in winemaking, or your family did. But I mean, how did you get involved in winemaking?
I grew up in a family that loved wine, and so it was always part of the dinner table, and I was always interested to me. And it just an opportunity came. I was out of university. I dropped out of engineering school. It wasn't for me. I was kind of bored. And then one day my dad said, "Hey, there's a new degree course, a bachelor's course in winemaking." And I thought, wow, that sounds really cool. That sounds really interesting. It's a great combination of the sciences, which I really love, and kind of growing things and, physical work. And it was just so varied in terms of, financial. We've got a doggy here. I love the idea that, you could combine the sciences, you could combine marketing, sales, engineering, finance, all those disciplines are wrapped up in our industry. And that kind of really appealed to me. So I did my degree and then started working for a couple of wineries here. And then in the early 2000s, I went to Europe and was lucky enough to get a job as what's called a flying winemaker. So back in those days, a lot of European wineries would employ Australians, New Zealanders, South Africans, who've been kind of trained in a modern way to come and help out in terms of, consulting how the wine's made, advising on equipment, that sort of thing. So I did that for about 7 years, and I got a really interesting, depth and breadth of experience from many different parts of Europe, climates, terroir, grapes, equipment, from very affluent wineries to quite the opposite in far Eastern Europe. So, it was kind of a bit of a unique experience as a winemaker to have that. Not everyone gets to do that for so long. So I really thought I had something to add to our business when we started it in terms of winemaking style.
And your story is not uncommon. I find that a lot of the winemakers that I talk to started in something sciencey or even math. So it's interesting because there seems to be a lot of connection there for people who become winemakers. And then you wanted to start it Invivo. I'm assuming, and maybe Tim, this is a question for you, but I'm assuming that things started out slow, but you must have had some people along the way who sort of gave you a hand up or helped you out. Were there mentors or people that really assisted in this process?
Not so much mentors, but we brought in experts in their field when we needed them over various stages. So, when we went to launch in the US, as an example, we brought a guy into the company called Steve Ray, who wrote a book, How to Launch Wines and Spirits in the US. Literally, he wrote the book, many years in the industry. And we flew him to New Zealand and basically locked him in a room for 3 days with Rob and I and a whiteboard. Said, we want to launch in the US. We've got no idea on how each state works and the rules. Show us how it's done. So we worked through that. We've brought in Annette Alvarez-Peters, the ex-head buyer of Costco, previously named one of the most powerful women in wine, or people in wine in the world. He's been helping us out for a number of years. We've had support from New Zealand Trade and Enterprise here in New Zealand, and some specialists that have been in other businesses and grown international exporting. So we've backed ourselves and our own talents that are complementary to what we're doing, but we've also, when needed, brought experts in because we can't do everything.
Yeah, fascinating. Let's go back to the winemaking a little bit, because Rob, you said that you had a lot of experience in European wineries and making wine, but then you said you wanted to do something different. You mentioned this idea of you wanted to have a fun and more contemporary style of wine. So what is unique about the wine that you make? Is it about the way you approach it? Is it about the grapes? It's probably all of that. But like, how would you define the way that you make wine?
From the experience in Europe, you work with big volumes of often not amazing quality grapes. And so you learn really quickly that to make a commercial wine, it's often not the aromatics that people, the consumer, are loving. But it is the texture and how the wine is balanced and feels in the mouth. So, coming from New Zealand, where the Sauvignon Blanc aroma profile was such a key part of that magic that a lot of winemakers were really sort of dialing into, we in our earlier years and to this day, we still take the texture and the palate of the wine as probably slightly more important than the aroma profile. Don't get me wrong, it's still really important, but we're very much of the feeling that, what first sip of any wine will determine whether you have another glass or another bottle. It's how that experience hits you. So I think fundamentally that's basically the style that we've gone for. We don't tend to make austere mineral style wines. I mean, I love them, but we feel like for our consumers, we want to tell a story as complex as possible in a way that's as approachable as possible.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I like to ask this question of winemakers, but do you lean more towards the art of winemaking or the science of winemaking, or are they both equally as interesting to you?
I think the older you get, the more experience you have, the science kind of takes care of itself. And it very much comes down to the experience, which is very much emotionally based, I suppose. So I think the art side of things, if you got the fundamentals right in the vineyard and the winery, then I probably don't spend that much time looking at the analysis of things unless something's really, piqued my interest, or I'm tasting something that I'm not quite sure about. Very much the art.
Okay, I'm going to go back to you, Tim, because you talked about something that was really interesting about how you sort of built the brand, because you didn't have a ton of money. And so one of the things that you talked about was telling stories through collaboration. And so you're kind of tugging at my heartstrings a little bit, because I've spent most of my career as a marketer. And so curious about, how you started doing that. What was it? Did it just come to you? Were there relationships that you already had? Like, how did you come to the way that you marketed the wine?
Because we didn't have that history to go on, the family winemaking history and all that sort of stuff. We didn't think we needed to talk about terroir and the lands and soils, because I felt there's enough wineries doing that already and probably could do it better than us. So we needed to find a unique positioning, in the global wine market for our brand. So the collaborations kind of just happened naturally from contacts both of us had in the early days. And actually, when working together outside of our category, it actually created this unique sort of campaign. So we work with graffiti artists who did all sorts of things for us, boxes that we sent out to media that had graffiti all over them, to media here in New Zealand and Canada and Japan. They did artwork installations. We worked with TEDx, TED Talks. We worked with that organization. We got a sort of a sculpture, I guess, artist, and we created like a
Like the Arc de Triomphe.
The Arc de Triomphe out of our cases of boxes that you could walk under. It was amazing outside a TEDx talk. So, working with these sort of creative industries was really interesting. It helped us stand out. And, when you run the company in terms of the marketing side, anything goes. So I'd be always open to someone reaching out to us and go, hey, you guys thought about working with this band, or you guys thought about, launching your own airline, which we did. The world's first winery airline, where we managed to get a plane for 24 hours, which we logoed up and did a flight, and we had a crew. And I had pilots all around the world contacting me. I had CNN call me up about this new airline, and we were on TV all around the world. So, these sort of ideas to help us stand out. Storytelling is really important. People want to know what's behind the brand, some authenticity behind it. So it just helped us stand out in the marketplace. And I think it resonated with buyers, because when you present your wine to a buyer, they go, how's this going to sell? I don't want to build the brand for you. You need to help us out here. And so all these sort of ideas and stunts worked well for us. And one way we did it really effectively, actually, as we were growing, banks weren't that keen to help us. We weren't millionaires in the wine industry. It's always tough. So we went out and did an equity crowdfunding campaign here in New Zealand. We were the first winery to do it in the Southern Hemisphere. And we knew we had a good following of all those store tastings we did around the country, and friends and family were keen to invest in our business. So when equity crowdfunding came into law here in New Zealand was allowed, we went out and crowdfunded and raised $2 million in a week. We were $1 million after 24 hours. So there was huge uptake. We thought we might get a couple of $100,000 we had a month on the campaign, so we thought this is going to be a slog, but in fact we blew it out, and we did the maximum you could raise in that week. So we've actually done it 3 times in total equity. We have over 800 shareholders now around the country, so it's kind of a fun way to have investment in the brand. It enabled us to take over a winery, bring in more tanks, expand the winery bottling line, all that stuff, and it kind of, again, in that challenging the status quo and doing things differently in terms of how we built this brand up.
Yeah, I mean, the way you've built the brand is you talk about a contemporary and fun wine, but you also built the brand that way. You really kind of took down that path, very modern ways of branding, of raising funds. It's pretty amazing. And then, so you must have some special kind of pull, because somehow you got involved with Sarah Jessica Parker. So can you explain how that came to be?
Yeah, well, I'll take you a little bit back before her. So we sell our wine in the UK. There's a chat show. This kind of leads into how we partnered with SJP, but there's a chat show called the Norton Show in the UK, quite well watched over there. He's a household name actually here in New Zealand as well, and I think in the States and other countries.
Yeah, we know who he is too. Yep.
So they drink on the show. They have glasses of wine on the show, which is awesome, and all the guests have it. So I managed to get our wine on the show. So all the wine that he serves is our wine, and that was just ringing up the show and managing to get a whole production team, and then getting through to Graham and said, we'll send the wine in. So we sponsored that show, and we have done for the last 14 years. So we actually approached Graham in 2014 to make a wine with us, and he agreed to do that. So he's on board with the business as well, and a part owner. But a part of that authenticity was with Graham that he'd be involved in the blending every year and signing off the blend.
Well, yeah, you're missing out the best bit, mate.
What's that?
Well, the initial fun stuff we did with Graham.
Oh, that's right. When we first launched the wine, yeah, he wanted to make it creative and fun. So we went back to the idea of one of our growers in Marlborough. We picked 10 kilos, so in pounds was about 22 pounds of grapes. I put them in a chili bin, a cooler.
And
got it. Yeah, translating. Okay, got it.
Yeah. And put them on a plane with me. Didn't declare them, and then threw them up to London, and went out in London, and then took the grapes to Graham to the set of his show with a bucket. Got him to stand on the grapes. Collected 2 bottles of juice. Jumped on the next plane back to New Zealand. And then Rob went up, climbed up the tank, and poured the 2 bottles of foot stump juice into the tank to launch the
So the first harvest or the first vintage of that wine. Yeah. So Tim had a film crew with him, and we made a little movie out of it. But it's basically the same as doing that on, well, I don't know, Jimmy Fallon, Jon Stewart, or one of those guys. Yep. But while they were rehearsing,
it was the most horrible looking green juice that I took back in 2 bottles that you've ever seen.
And the story went nuts.
Yeah, and it went all around media. So that was the first vintage. So, working with Graham, that brand's now sold upwards of 20 million bottles. So that collaboration with him. So we thought, how could we take this idea to the US and the things that we do behind the scenes as well? So we identified Sarah Jessica Parker would be a great partner for the business. We didn't know her. We love the fact that, she's obviously got great business now. She's got a massive following. She has longevity in the industry, not an overnight sort of star. So I reached out to her agent and went through a few levels there. Presentations, and then one day my phone rang and this famous voice was on my phone, SJP, and so I put it on speaker and Rob and I were chatting to her. The accent probably threw her a little bit, but we just talked about how we wanted to make a wine with her, but we wanted her involved, hands-on, signing off the blends every year. This is not a one-off, long-term partnership. It resonated with her. She was up for it. She holidays in Ireland. She had tried our wine. She knew us, which was, a great boost for the partnership. So she tried the wine before, which was great. So that's kind of how that partnership, just a bit of hustling really, and then just bonding with her. And Rob and I flew to New York and sat down for an afternoon in her office with a bottle of wine and just drank and talked through the concept. We didn't have a label or anything to show her. We just said, hey, look, this is what we want to do, but we're going to fly up here. We're going to get you tasting and signing off the blend every year.
Just add to that, it started with Graham. We kind of created this unique Invivo IP and how we, involve these people, how we actually do our collaborations. We knew there's a risk that some people would say, oh, that's just a, celebrity wine. It's, it's not real. It's, there's no quality to it. They're just putting the name on there. And we've fought that, many, many years. But as Tim said, with Graham Norton, which is a huge brand now, we've been doing that for 14 years now. And part of how we kind of came around this IP was we said to Graham, would you like to come down to New Zealand during harvest to help us make the wine? And he said, look, I'd love to, but I'm way too busy. Why don't you guys get creative and come back to me? So we did. And we thought, well, why don't we take the final stage of the winemaking process, the blending, and we take it to him. And that's what we did. And what we found was, Graham, he's not a winemaker, he's not a wine professional, but like many of us, loves his wine, very passionate about it, knows what he likes. And taking him through the blending process of the Sauvignon Blanc initially was just like light bulbs going off in his head. 1, amazing flavors of these young wines. 2, how much fun it is to combine them with his input rather than me doing it. And 3, understanding how powerful your palate is. Most people really underestimate how much power is in the nose and in the palate. They run themselves down. They say, oh, no, I can never smell that. I'm not very good at that. The whole thing's kind of intimidating, and then you've got some, very, cultured, winemaker who knows everything, and it's kind of talking down to them a little bit. And we kind of hate that. And so we want to open that up. We want to blow the lid off all that nonsense and say that, look, anybody can put a good blend together because it's so obvious when you get it right and it's so obvious when you get it wrong. And that first process with Graham of doing that, he got so excited and was so engaged, had so much fun. And that kind of that's our IP that we kind of created then, and then basically rolled the same thing out with SJ. And she, she's as Tim says, very successful businesswoman outside of her acting career. And one of the things she's very passionate about is perfume. So she already was well ahead of the game in terms of, the organoleptic ability. And, her nose and her palate is just dialed in. And when we're blending, we argue over 0.5% of one particular Sauvignon Blanc in there. It is that down to that level of precision. And every year, it's just part of the fun. It evolves a little bit, and she's just there every year. Okay, I think we did great last year. We can push the boundaries a little bit this year, but we're still going to give our people what they need in terms of style. So she's really cognizant of that as well. So it's just the most fun day that you could ever have, basically.
I think it's amazing that the people that you partner with have so much, they're so actively involved with the winemaking. I think that's really exciting. So let's talk a little bit more about some other wines. So you have the Sauvignon Blanc, but you also have a Pinot Noir and you have a Rosé. Anything you want to talk about with the latest releases of your wines?
Yeah, look, the Sauvignon Blanc really successful. Fundamentally, we are a company that makes wines that people want to drink, and we get requested. A lot of people ask us, "Hey, can you do a rosé? What about a Pinot Noir?" And we kind of take that feedback, and once it reaches a kind of, I suppose, a critical mass, then we look at it and we investigate it. And if we can find partners around the world to work with to supply us with the raw material or allow us to come into their winery and kind of do our thing, then yeah, if it's got legs in terms of practicality, then we do it. So latest release, Pinot Noir from Marlborough, which we're very excited about. And again, just the vast array of different expressions of that grape from that region. The style options are very, very, almost limitless. And, Sarah Jessica just loved it as well. So, it was just a no-brainer. So that's just recently been released, 2023 Marlborough Pinot, which we're really excited about. Really textural. As she'd say, it's got a little bit of something dirty in there, which we love, along with all that New Zealand, fruit and cherries and black plums and things like that. We also kind of blend a little bit of Pinot Noir from Central Otago, which is much further south, and that kind of changes the blend quite a bit. It sort of adds another dimension, and that's kind of the cool thing that we get from working with, Sarah Jessica and with Graham, is that, one of our core values is kind of break dumb rules. We're not afraid to try things. Why can't we do that? Rather than, we can't do that. So we're very happy to kind of blend different areas, different grapes. You'd say Sauvignon Blanc is only from Marlborough. Well, it's not actually. Sauvignon Blanc's grown all around New Zealand, and it's really good. So for the Graham Norton Sauvignon Blanc, it's not necessarily from Marlborough. We use Hawke's Bay, we use Gisborne, Nelson, all different regions. For us, it doesn't really matter so much where the fruit comes from. It's about how we can create a wine that's stylistically what we want to achieve for our consumers.
Yeah, well, I've been a big fan of New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc for a long time, but I think people kind of sleep on the Pinot Noir as well. I found the Pinot Noirs from New Zealand to be excellent, really excellent, and well priced quite often too. So what's next? What's next for you guys? Where do you go from Sarah Jessica Parker? Like what's next on the horizon?
I think for us, it's we've got SJ doing a thing in the US and other countries around the world. That's still the focus. There's you're just scratching the surface. And look, she in terms of you mentioned she's hands-on in blending. She's also coming to all the buyer meetings with us. I think I worked out the other day she's been to over 30 meetings with me in the last 12 months, where she's getting up presenting the brand. We've traveled to various states and things. So it's about we've built a really good platform in the US. Some great numbers coming out, fastest growing Sauvignon Blanc. It's been, in a tough wine category right now. Depletions are firing. Our importer Palm Bay is doing an amazing job. So it's like, we want to hit home. The US is a big place, and we've got a lot of work there still to do. We're up there with Wine Experience, New York Wine Experience, and then we're doing a whole lot of stuff at the start of next year as well around the US. So that's kind of the focus, rather than we want to get away with not more celebrities or anything like that, because that's not what we're about. We've got a great brand partner who's hands-on and wants to see the brand grow. She's a part owner of the business as well, so this is for the long term.
Excellent, and you made a good segue. So if you're coming to the United States and you're heading to Seattle, because we live in Seattle, then we want to see you. We have a tradition. You're both invited. It's a big deal to be invited. You're both invited to Sunday night dinner. It's a big Italian family. It's really loud. It's quite intimidating, but I think you guys can handle it.
We're there. That's awesome.
And the only thing we ask, the meal will be free. We won't charge you, but we do ask that you bring wine. Now we have kind of I guess would be traditional Italian American food. I don't know. It's always as Italian as the Italians would have perhaps in some cities, but what would you bring? What would you pair with the meal? Think of it as a 3-course pasta course, then the main, and then, maybe some appetizers at the beginning as well.
Well, we've got the perfect trio, right? We've got rosé from Provence. We can start with some shrimp or something like that.
I think they're the chefs that make it.
Yeah. Sauvignon Blanc from Marlborough kind of goes with everything, and then Pinot Noir. I mean, that would be the range from SJ. But we also do a Shiraz from Australia and a South American Malbec, and a Chardonnay, Pinot Gris. We kind of do the whole range.
It's going to be a big night.
Yeah, you better get cooking.
Well, we'll start cooking. You guys bring the chiller. What did you call it? The
Chiller, Esky. There's a few names for it.
You bring that. We'll have you guys over. No, it would be really fun.
Like
I'm being serious. What's that?
Awesome.
It sounds like it's going to be more like a container.
Yeah, it's going to be. Yeah, you need a big shipment container. That's right. Well, this has been awesome. I really appreciate it. Before we go, I just want to give you a chance to let people know how they can find your wines, how they can find you guys, your website, all that stuff. So have at it.
Sure. Yeah. So invivowines.com is our company website. Our brand in the US, InvivoXSJP.com. You can go on there, and it has a lot of retailers. You can put your postcode in and find out local retailers. But we are nationwide in the likes of Kroger, Ralph's, BevMo, these sort of retailers, Costco, HEB down in Texas, lots of retailers around the place. If you Google the brand InvivoXSJP, buy near me, then hopefully that one of them will come up. But we've done a lot of hard work with those retailers over the last sort of 4 or 5 years to get some traction right around the States. So most of those key retailers will have it.
That's great. Well, we'll be on the lookout for it, and we're telling our listeners about it. So super excited about it, and strong recommendation to find it and seek it out. Well, thanks very much. Really appreciate it, Tim and Rob. It's been a great conversation. Anything else before we go?
Thanks for having us on. It's been great.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, you bet. Okay.
Nice one.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, really, really enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks for being on.
No worries. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cheers.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you very much for listening to our interview with Tim Lightbourne and Rob Cameron of Invivo Wines, and we hope you will take the time to learn more about them, their wines, and their partnership with Sarah Jessica Parker. And just in case you were worried about memorizing all the website and email and all that other stuff to get in touch with them, don't worry. You can find out all of this information on our website, thewinepairpodcast.com, in our show notes for this episode. So you just go to our website, you find this episode, you scroll down the show notes, you click on the little expand, and you'll find all this information. But so you have it. Here again is the information about how to find out more about Tim, Rob, and Invivo Wines. Their website is InvivoXSJP.com. So Invivo is INVIVO, then it's XSJP.com. Instagram is at InvivoXSJP. Facebook is the same, InvivoXSJP. And if you want to email them, you can email them at iwantsjp@invivowines.com. And we hope you'll subscribe to our podcast, The Wine Pair Podcast, and follow us on Instagram, and visit our website at thewinepairpodcast.com, where you can reach out to us and sign up for our newsletter. And you can also reach out to me anytime you want to at joe@thewinepairpodcast.com if you want more information or just want to hang out and chat. But we really look forward to hearing from you and seeing you again. But now it's time to go. And as we like to say, life is short, so stop drinking shitty wine. Bye-bye.